And greetings and welcome to the QCast. This is the season 5 premiere, episode number 1, season 5. I'd like to just start by saying thanks to everyone that has been so great in supporting the QCast. It's been a blast to do this. Season 4, we did 57 episodes, and hopefully today is the first of somewhat more than 57. Looking forward to season 5. I try to do these things by school years. And having been up in Bloomington, Illinois this past weekend at the IW men's basketball golf outing and hearing stories of people moving in this week and kind of all the stir about a new school year, I figured the time was now to kick off season 5. One request of everyone, if you guys could click the subscribe button on YouTube, that would be a huge help to me in growing the QCast. And again, thanks to all of you. I wanted to start season 5 with a conversation that's very timely in Division 3 right now. Unfortunately, many Division 3 schools are facing pretty significant financial troubles. We've seen a lot of schools that have announced closures. Some have already closed. There's also kind of articles and media out there around other schools that seem to be in some level of trouble. And while that's not the most fun conversation of all time, I think it's as timely as anything. And I'm really thrilled to have Lance Thornhill with me, the head men's basketball coach of Fontbonne University in St. Louis. And coach, before we get any further, how the heck are you doing? How's everything going in St. Louis? And thank you so much for being willing to do the QCast.
I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, it's been a tumultuous time for Division 3 athletics, and I think it's probably going to continue for a year or so, and hopefully some certain schools on the borderline will make it through. But everything's going good here, and we finally have figured out our path, and seems like looks like we're going to have a good season.
Yeah, let's talk through that a little. So many angles of this. So I'll kind of start with on March 11th of this year, 2024. Fontbonne announced it would be closing after the summer of 25. The pulling an exact quote from that announcement, it said, after many years of declining enrollments and shrinking endowment, the financial position of the university was determined to be unsustainable for the long term. Lance, how long was this floating out there? I know that it wasn't like March 11th was complete news to everybody, but for what period of time were you aware of the significant troubles that were kind of playing out at the financial level of the university?
Well, it was interesting how that all played out because in 19, 20, and 21 were the COVID years. So you heard things that, that the federal government was giving us help, and that was, from what I understood, was a help that was hopefully maybe going to give us a bounce back. And so I guess when you're in a Division 3 format, every recruiting year it could be the make or break for any school. So like
Right.
if you were to not bring in any students in that year, I would venture to guess, outside of the WashUs of the world, that there would be a lot of schools, in a big problem. So to say that there's something out there, or that that there was a problem, I kind of understood that back in 1993 when I took the position, that
Right.
our tuition was how we were going to be financially based, and in order to be able to thrive, we were going to need to bring in a good recruiting class every year. So it wasn't like that felt like that we were ever in trouble. We just knew that numbers were declining, and we did everything we could to bring in a good recruiting class every year.
When did so that public announcement was March 11th? About when did you get official word of the closing of Fontbonne? Was it somewhere just like days
About
before that?
about 2 hours after it was announced. Yeah, it was
Wow.
that day. Walking over to the meeting, being around this place as long as I've been, I knew that this meeting had a different flavor to it. I still didn't think the doors were gonna close. I
Sure.
did think we were gonna hear another, round of layoffs or, I thought this was gonna be a big budget cut. I thought we had enough students that we were gonna be able to remain open. But the main factor that I wasn't aware of is the HLC had kind of put us on suspension, which, that kind of, it's called retrenchment. And when you go in that, the Higher Learning Commission, they put you in a place where you're until you get your financial, status back in order, you're not allowed to bring in a freshman recruiting class. And when that news hit, I automatically did the did the understanding of it. I don't know if everyone did. Our university was there, but I kind of put two and two together and realized this was going to be uh, the kind of the end of it. I didn't know how. It was still probably a 2 hour meeting that was announced the first 15 or 20 minutes, and then I wasn't sure how it was going to look from then on. But then I
Right.
heard the rest of the news, which gave us another year.
What in terms of how the student athletes reacted to this, Lance, I can't imagine how difficult this would be to hear. And the timing of it, March 11th, gosh, you were just a couple weeks, a week from playing in an NCAA tournament game. I also know you're the director of golf operations, and you're also a golf coach. So between your basketball student athletes and golf and just those around you, like how did people take this news when it broke?
Oh, it was mixed. Some of our coaches took it really hard. I'm an older, been around a while, so I didn't know how much longer. I probably had 3, 4, 5 years here, so it wasn't as devastating to me as maybe it was to other coaches. But then the students, I've always been a guy that looked forward to try to find positives and everything. So, we kind of separated. I told the freshmen that you could look at this as a JUCO and come here, and you're going 2 years here, and then we'll find you a place after you go your first 2 years. The seniors, they were going to be able to make it out anyway because we were staying open for really what was considered 4 semesters. We did summer, a fall, a spring, and then the final summer. So if you wanted to, you could really graduate. Juniors and seniors could all graduate. So basically, kind of looked at it from that standpoint. But as the majority of the students, I would say it was taken as news that was surprising, and some of them felt, uneasy, maybe that they didn't, get a full story about everything going on. But like I try to tell everybody, Division 3 is a different, it's a different place when it comes to recruiting and when it comes to student bodies. And if you were to, not bring in a freshman class, then you're going to have tough financial issues. So it
Right.
wasn't like it was something that was brewing. It was just, I kind of, everyone that I discussed it with, I tried to let them know that information, just being around it for so long, it's just a tough situation. But the good news is we were one of the very few programs or institutions that was going to close, but give it, like I said, the 4 semesters where everyone could, one, graduate if you were a junior or senior, and two, if you were a younger, freshman or sophomore, you had that extra year to kind of, if you wanted to participate here in athletics or get your core requirements in academics, and also gives you a year to make a decision. And from what I understand, we're one of the only institution that has done this and trying it this way. And we were in a position where, WashU was the one that bought us out.
Right.
And so we had the financial backing of that buyout that allowed us to do this. Not every school would be able to have this format to work forward from, because not every school is fortunate enough to have the option that we did. So that's why, one, we're kind of a unique situation. But in other institutions that have this, if they do have a a place or a institution or a university that would be able to help them with the financial backing, that they could go down this path as well.
Yeah, great point in that, so WashU, your neighbor there in St. Louis is buying the 16-acre campus of Fontbonne. Just so people know, Fontbonne's been around over 100 years, founded in 1923. It's a private Catholic liberal arts university, entrenched in the Division III world for certainly as long as I can remember. Obviously, a big part of the SLIAC conference. And so, yeah, the good news is that financially, with the WashU buyout, that at least helped the way this is kind of closing up. I think that's as good of a outcome as any. When you look at, I just want to mention too, you mentioned how important that student athlete recruiting is for Division III schools. Almost every, I think, Lance, I went to Illinois Wesleyan, and gosh, I think Illinois Wesleyan's almost 40%
Right.
student athletes now. If you go to the website and start pulling up rosters, I think
Yeah.
about 40% of a 1,800 student campus is on a roster. You've seen that play out in over several years.
Yeah.
Division III and student athletes go hand in hand. Talk a little bit about that aspect of it.
Well, back in the day, back when I first was here, a lot of corporations were paying their employees to go to school, and our program was called the options program, and it was a huge financial backing for us, where we weren't so reliant on the just the freshman tuition and the
Right,
athletics. And as time went on, these companies and corporations, they kind of took out that employee invested option for their employees to come here and get a master's, or finish up their undergrad education. When that bubble bursted, the whole financial backing came on recruiting,
right,
freshmen and transfers. So that made Division III, at least at Fontbonne, it made us trying to survive a whole nother world. So that was the first thing that started all this. And then now, as time went on and on, all schools started trying to figure out what sports brought in the most students, what sports had the best retention, and which sports to keep and not keep that were viable in order to
right.
keep the institution stronger. And we started men's volleyball back, I guess, shoot, 20 years ago, maybe even longer. That was a program that helped, but there's certain programs that really stuck, and there's certain programs that were just too expensive to make it work. I mean, any program will work if you bring in 40 or 50 guys every
Right,
year, but our girls, but that doesn't happen every year because you have this high turnover with coaches, especially in certain sports.
right.
And when you're getting this high turnover with coaches, you never know you never know how that new coach is going to recruit or not. So, that was the other important part of running an athletic department, is the better coaching staff you had, the better chance you had of a
Right.
recruiting class. And Fontbonne got up to around 70% of student athletes compared to regular students, as far as how our recruiting classes were looking.
You
Did that
you,
answer? I
you
think that answered.
absolutely no, it's great stuff, and it's fascinating, the dynamics that have played out in Division III. There's not many Division III schools that aren't reliant on varsity sports. It's just, there's some here and there, but the vast majority of Division III schools are very reliant on Division III athletics. Wanted to ask you, Lance, a little bit about your background, because you've been at Fontbonne a long time. I think you were an assistant for what, almost 20, and this is going to be your 10th year as the head men's basketball coach. So have you been around campus somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 years? Do I have the math about right?
This will be my 32nd year. I actually
Wow.
started over at Webster back in 1992. So I actually started their golf program, which is a great golf program nowadays. But yeah, I was at Webster University my first 2 years, and then now I've come over here. This will be my 32nd year. Yes.
32nd year. And of course, you coached under Lee McKinney. And Lee McKinney was there a long time. I think he was 24 years as the head men's basketball coach. He was the AD for I think one year less than that, maybe 23 years. He
Right.
had 330 wins. He was also at Missouri Baptist, so he's got like 518 collegiate wins. Of course, Coach McKinney passed away several years ago. But let me ask you about Coach McKinney. What was he like? What did you learn from him in all those years that you worked with him?
I learned everything from Coach McKinney as far as Division III world worked, and as far as coaching Division III athletics. If there's one thing he understood, was that he understood the Division III part compared to the NAIA part, where he came from Missouri Baptist. And he always understood how important that every sport we had and every coach we had, how important it was to keep that recruitment up. Basketball wise, he taught, I came in as a Division I athlete, so I only understood college athletics kind of from my own experience. The Webster experience did help me, but not till really became, understanding of it was through Coach McKinney about how it all worked. And he taught, you can't, you had to go about coaching a little differently
Right.
on the Division III level than you did as a Division I athlete. And I probably didn't understand that. I was probably as a slow learner. He understood it thoroughly from day one, but he was very patient with me and a huge supporter of me every way on that part of it. And I gradually learned that, that these men and women, they're here, for an education first, and that they all are participating, not under a college scholarship. That any time, if they don't like what's going on, that they can choose other paths. And it's funny how it's played out. Division I now can transfer at any time and go in the
Right.
portal. And I tell people Division III's been the portal all along.
Right.
You had to coach your athletes much differently than Division I and II were back then. Now Division I and II are finding out they got to coach their athletes kind of like Division III has the whole time. So anyway, Coach McKinney, he kind of broke me in on that, how to coach a Division III athlete really early. And that helped, of course, your assistants always want you to be tougher and harder and put in these programs and run these practices. But I always went back to what he taught me and how I saw how he treated his players. And, certain things would be like, don't take your practices too long. You don't put mandates in, you kind of work with them. And by watching him do that, I'm not saying he was easy. He was a tough coach, but he understood the format we were in, and it helped me. It formed
Right.
me as an assistant coach, which eventually helped me as a head coach.
You mentioned coming from the Division I level, you went to Missouri State, you played basketball and golf, and then you end up in Division III now for all these years. You mentioned starting at Webster, 32 years now at Fontbonne. I think you covered most of this, but just to kind of put a bow on it is, so how do you define like what's great about Division III now that we got to say that you're a true blue D3 guy now, coach, even though you went to a D1 school. But how do you define the awesome parts of Division III?
Well, selfishly, I'll say the reason I've been around is job security. Division I and II, you never know where you're going to be. I'm more of a people person. I like my assistant coaches that I've had, they're still with me. In Division I and II, and I saw this as an athlete, you see so much turnover and coaches wanting to move up the ladder. And as a Division III coach, I'm not saying everyone has job security. You still got to win at the Division III level, but it's definitely a different format of how things. It's a different beast animal as far as how things are looked at. And I saw a lot of coaches, as long as they recruited, their winning percentage wasn't defined on whether they kept their job or not.
Right.
And I always told people, the only way I'm going to recruit well is I got to win. I never did kind of figure out that formula, how to bring in a lot of recruiting numbers and still not have a good win-loss percentage. Now that we did start winning, the recruiting became easier, but what I found is you get better athletes. You get more guys, good guys, good players that want to be part of be part of you. You always had kind of the certain numbers that would come play college athletics, but the better you got, the better recruit. I mean, that's like, I guess that's that way in any sport. But anyway, that's kind of what I like about Division III is that it's more of a people, it's just kind of surrounded by relationships more than coaches wanting to
Right.
move, so, and that's the main thing I liked about it, was that not only just relationships with my assistants, relationships with my athletic director, the president, we're smaller schools, and even the other coaches. But you also, I feel like you get a better relationship with your players too. So there's one word I could put on it, would be relationships. It seems just more
Yeah.
relationship based division.
And I would say those of us that are just fans also love Division III for the same thing. The relationships you can form with the student athletes, the coaching staff, the things you can do in connecting with your alma mater that you could never do in Division I are pretty amazing. Also wanted to ask you a little bit about, just for context, on the differing types of Division III institutions. I think like Division I, there's tiers in Division III. There's a group of schools that can legitimately win the men's basketball national championship every year, and there's some that have a much harder haul. I'm thinking of like the two schools we've talked about already. The school that's buying Fontbonne,
Right.
WashU and Fontbonne have very different playing fields when you talk about athletic opportunities in the schools. Can you talk a little bit, Lance, just about that fact of, like Fontbonne being in this world in the SLIAC as a small school, kind of a regional liberal arts school, competing in this Division III landscape with the WashUs of the world, and if you expand that radius, the Wisconsin Whitewaters and whoever else, it's really there's a lot of variety in Division III. Talk about that a little bit.
There is. I actually coached baseball as an assistant coach here for 5 years, and so I've got to experience it from different avenues, as you might say. But yeah, when I first took the job, and our admissions was kind of in turmoil a little bit, and coaches told me, or previous people that had been here told me, you can't win at Fontbonne anymore. You can't win, and I just refuse to hear that. I think that you can. This is like a little business. You can take any athletic program if you want to, if you got enough desire, and you can take any athletic program, whether you're small, whether you're WashU,
Right.
and in the Division III landscape, and you can win. It may take a little harder work, and it may take a little luck with getting a few good recruits, but I never did listen to that. I never wanted to believe it. I think you can win whether you're a Wisconsin Whitewater, whether you're WashU, whether you're an Emory, and you can win whether you're a Westminster or whether you're a Eureka College. If you have enough desire to do it and put enough time in, you can do it. Now, why I brought the baseball relationship up was, or the example was, in baseball, when you make it to the national championship, you get to play in like a 16 pod, so you get a double
Right.
elimination, and you kind of, in a lot of times, your game will be a neutral site game. So in certain sports, you have a much better chance of making it through, of
Right.
getting to that next level. Basketball is the one animal where you bring up where it's the hardest. I personally believe, men and women, the hardest place to do it, because you gotta, most times, I would say 90% of the time, you've got to go play that team on their home floor.
Right.
We did get one postseason experience where we got a neutral site, and it was Mary Hardin Baylor down in Millsaps. We got to play them on a neutral site, and that was a whole other experience of getting to play that team on a neutral site. We
Right.
played them, they beat us at the buzzer, but it showed me in my eyes, if you have a good enough record during the season, you can get one of those pods where you play a neutral site game. Unfortunately, we were just I felt like this was the year before we announced our closing that we might get a chance at that neutral site game. Anyway, we didn't get a chance to do it, but if you can get to that postseason experience and get a neutral site game and then get that first win, and we never know, the host team might get beat, so you get two neutral sites. But anyway, basketball is that's the toughest way to go, because you usually got to play like the number one, two, or three team in the country on their home floor.
Right.
And that's a tough way to go. But I still think I know the SLEAC has never won a postseason basketball game in the men's side, but I still think it's doable, and I know it's possible, and I hope somebody does it here in the near future.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of examples around the country that prove out exactly what you're saying. I mean, one that comes to mind off the top of my head is what Illinois College is doing right now, being an MWC powerhouse, a top 25 type program now. Their performance in the NCAA tournament there at WashU last year, you look at what Coach Schweer and his staff have built, it proves exactly what you're saying, that if you go out and you get the right kids, it might be harder to get the right kids than at, some other places, but if you do it, you can build it anywhere. Um,
I think it's possible, and yes, you got to know you might be playing a Whitewater, or or an Old WashU, or an Emory, or you just know that that's the product, and you got to take on the challenge, and your guys know it, and you just got to. I will say the officiating has become a lot better in the last 10 years. I feel like we've got such a fair shake, as opposed to 20
yeah.
years ago with Coach McKinney. I thought that anyway, that's another story, but I feel like it's possible to be done nowadays. I just feel like the officials are in a better place, and I feel like just as the whole country as a unit, you see all those competitive games now,
Yeah,
a lot more competitive games in that first round.
having that national assigner of officials and then some of the regional people, I think, has really helped the work that Jim Haney's done on that.
100%.
Yeah, because you get
Huge
used to
help.
get into some of those, used to go on the road in the tournament back in the 80s and 90s, and you didn't know what you were going to get in terms of the officiating, and now it's all done at kind of that national and regional level. And I
Yeah,
I agree with you. As someone that's been to a lot of road tournament games, it is so much better now.
yeah.
Asking about your team, we mentioned playing road games in the NCAA tournament. Well, you're coming off of that, and it was an incredible game. So last year, you guys go 20-8 and 13-5 in the league, but you win the SLIAC tourney, so you get the bid, and you get sent to Trine, and you lose by 10. You lose 91-81. But I watched almost all of that game, and you're down just three at half. In the second half, you were down. There were parts of the second half fairly late, down two-ish, maybe 6 minutes left, 5 minutes left. They pulled away in the last like 2 minutes of the game. I mean, it was still very much in question with under 2 minutes to play. Trine goes on, coach, to win the national championship. And so isn't it amazing that to your point about, sometimes, how you can build it. I mean, boy, you almost knocked off on their floor the team that beat everybody. Talk about the experience of that Trine game.
Trine game, well, I didn't even know where Trine was, and I thought I knew where most of these schools were. I knew they were in the Hope and Calvin Conference. I just didn't know exactly
Right.
where they were. I found out where Angola, Indiana was, but I kind of knew where they were. I just didn't know exactly, and I had no idea how great of a campus and
Yeah.
athletic facility they had. That was amazing. But going into Trine, we went up there. I'd had a couple guys that we'd been there the year before, so we kind of had the experience. So we weren't totally new to everything. But we had Trine, we saw Trine on film, and really their team chemistry was so much like ours. They were just 2 inches bigger in every position, but
Right.
as far as what they did and how they played, it was eerily similar. I talked to Coach Miller a few times since that game, And even our coaching styles are similar as far as how he pressures the ball and when just the rebounding, how they just don't have one or two. They got everybody going for rebound, just like we do. We have a similar structure. We do a little bit more pressing than they do. But I told my guys before the game that we kind of understood trying because they played such a similar style that, and it played out that way too in the game. We had a Brett Wagner had a heck of a game that year, that day, making a bunch of shots, but he got really hot down the stretch for us, which really made us our team one factor. When he got hot, our team was a completely different team. So, and he was hot that game. So I knew going to at halftime that we had a chance. Once again, I was worried a little bit about the officials, but I knew the officials from being around so long. So that also gave me a little bit of relief on that factor. But I knew Trine on their home floor was going to be really hard to beat because they were such good free throw shooters. I knew they were going to be hard to beat down the stretch. But I told our guys, if we can have it close or within possession in the last 5 or 6 minutes, then we're going to throw every press we have at them, and we're not going to allow any easy buckets. Well, try and made some big shots on us. I mean, huge. I mean, we regarded them as well as we guarded all year. They just so happened to make some shots that when we guarded earlier, teams didn't make. And then we had two or three huge turnovers that we weren't really used to it that
Right.
time. Usually they're down the stretch. I had a team of guys that really took care of the ball. We usually got good shots. We had some uncharacteristic turnovers, but the experience and just having a chance to beat them on their home floor was huge. It was exciting. But it was a game we went into that we felt like we had a chance as long as we withstood those first 4 or 5 minutes. That nervousness and your
Right.
home team playing, coming out with a bunch of energy. You never know if you're going to withstand that first 5 or 6 minutes. But we got through that, and that's when we all kind of felt like we had a chance. It just didn't play out down. We needed trying to have
Right.
a cold shooting 5 minutes, and it played out. I watched them the rest of the tournament, and every last 5 or 6 minutes, they seem to do
Right.
that to Co. They seem to do that to
Platteville.
every team they played. I can't remember the semifinals, Wisconsin team,
Platteville.
Platteville. Platteville made a couple mistakes, but anyway, they just didn't. They made shots down the stretch, and in the championship game, they just played well the whole game. But and WashU, it was every game. They some teams you play, they kind of fade on you where you can kind of get the. Trine didn't have that. Trine got stronger as you played
Right.
them, and that was one factor that we didn't know. And I think that goes to the conference season they play. They get to play Calvin twice. They get to play
Right.
Hope twice, and there's other good teams in that league. And so it wasn't unusual. It wasn't a unique
Right.
position for them to be in close down the stretch.
And it is funny how thin the margins can be. You guys had a great chance to knocking off the eventual national champs in that Elite Eight game against Platteville. They were down something like 10 with a minute something left. And every crazy thing that needed to happen happened, including one of these like Platteville fouled up three
All right.
and the kid makes the first, intentionally misses the second, gets the rebound, like the eventual national champs easily. I mean, probably should have lost in the Elite Eight. And it's just like you said, they were great closers. They were great closers
Great
against you.
closers.
Every game they played, I was in Fort Wayne. They were fantastic down the stretch of games.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and so
Unbelievable. They,
those margins can be just so thin in these how's as a coach making your career in a profession like this, Lance, where you go down the stretch and it's in the hands of a bunch of 19 to 22-year-olds, and if they're going to take care of the ball or make or miss a free throw, like I don't know how you guys do it, coach. I mean,
I
isn't that a
tell,
little
yeah.
stressful?
I tell my assistants, they always have these ideas about they want to put in and for who, and I just tell 'em, come on, guys, let's all kind of admit here, this substituting thing's kind of potluck. So you never know what's going to happen until the guy gets in there. Because I've made as many bad subs as I have good subs, but and I think Coach Miller tell you the same thing. You try to put the right guys in for the moment, but really, when it comes down to and you try to call the right play or, the right defense or that's all good and dandy until it doesn't play out right. But you try and put them in the best position to win, right? But really, when it comes down to it, those last 4 or 5 minutes, it comes down to your guys making shots, your guys getting loose rebounds and
Right.
loose balls, and your guys getting big stops. And coaching wise, you hope that you have coached them well enough throughout the year that they'll execute what you've preached all along. And you don't know if it's going to happen or not. It's, the players make the plays. You just try to put them in the right position
Right.
to make the play and have the right guys on the floor that will work together to make the right play. But really, I think any coach would tell you that
Right.
the players make the plays.
Yeah, very, very well said. Even from a fan standpoint, I think those of us that follow enough games know that sometimes it just comes down to what happens on the floor there in the final minutes, how the guys react.
Yeah, look
Um,
at the WashU IC game, I think it
oh,
was, and the Dubuque game. I mean,
right,
swear to tell you, that played out. Pretty much was out of his hands. I mean, one
right.
half great for him, but it's like you try and put the guys out there that you trust the most that will make the play for you. That's all you can do. I think
Just
the one guy he had in there threw it in from half court and made it.
right.
You don't know that guy. You just try and put the right guy. I don't even know if that guy was the guy to take the shot, but I think he was the guy. But he also probably knew that that guy could make a shot if he needed to. So
Yeah, great examples of in St. Louis. Yeah, Illinois College, he just wins on that crazy shot. The next night, they probably should have won, made some
right.
mistakes, right? It just the bounces of the ball. Just really one more topic for you, Lance, and thanks so much for doing this. But I think to me, my biggest question for you is like how do you approach this season? You're playing a season. First of all, without getting into guy by guy by guy, but of the people that were supposed to return this year to Fontbonne from that great team that lost the tight game to Trine, like how many of those kids have returned versus said, "Coach, I love you, but I need to go somewhere else." Like, are most of the guys back or not back?
Well, two of the guys were seniors. They'd lost, they exhausted their eligibility, so they're not, they were done. And then the top other three guys, one's playing Division II. Actually, I think two. I'm not sure where Sheck's going. I think he's going either Division I or Division II. Ethan Chartrand's going Division II. When you have all this success, like our soccer team, they lost in the championship of their conference finals. The soccer team's getting everybody back because they have
Sure,
this whole bond that they want to win. Well, we won, our championship, had a great experience at Trine. So now my guys are all getting picked off by higher
sure,
divisions. So, it's different. I kind of, in one certain ways, I kind of wish we had had that bond with us to want to win another conference championship. But I get it. These guys are paying their own way. If they get opportunities or scholarship offers, I
right,
fully support them and help them with it. But anyway, and then Adam Painter's also going to help out Maryville. So I actually got two guys going Division II and the other. So my top five, actually my top six guys aren't coming back, but we do have 8 guys coming back from the team. Then I've got a couple other guys. We had football here, so I've got a football player that's going to play. Actually, 2 football players, and then a soccer goalie. So we're going to end up having about 11 guys. I did want to say one thing and make sure by all the coaches heard this. I cannot believe how much support I've received from all the programs in the country. The coaches have been so kind and so considerate because they know all my guys have an open format to be recruited. They're all there's no buying, there's nothing keeping
right.
the guys here. So they have an open transfer. But every one of my guys that have been talked to, the coaches have reached out to me first, and I just thought that, I thought
Yeah.
that was even our conference coaches, and even Coach Miller up at Trine, he's recruited a couple guys. He wanted to talk to me first before he got into recruiting to any of the guys, which I was thrown, just blown away by how neat that was. Because the coaching profession is so competitive, and we're going after the same guys
Right.
all the time, and getting one or two guys get to your program and against another team. That's the make or break a lot of times of having a 21
Yeah.
season, or having just so to see the coaching world from this different light than what I was usually in that was awesome. That's been by far the best experience I've had through all this. There's been a lot of good
Right.
experience, been a lot of bad ones too, but the support I've seen I've gotten from these other coaches has been great. It's been unbelievable. But anyway, so moving forward, that I've got 4 or 5 freshmen that they're wanting to know where I'm going next year because they want to go where I'm
Sure.
going. I told them, I was like, I don't know where I'm going yet. So I don't, there's a lot of places where you guys might not go with me. I would try and like anything I could to get them to go with me. I just wanted them to know that, there's certain academics involved, there's divisions involved. So don't make your decision completely on where I'm going, but it's a great idea. Stay with me this year, and then let's go together. It could also help me too find a position too if I got 2 or 3 good players coming with me. So it's definitely something that's like that. There's an example. I never even thought about that when I first heard about the closing. But as times come on, I was like, you know what? These guys are going to be juniors next year, and they're going to be. I got 2 or 3 really good players coming back, and they're going to be in high demand. And
Sure.
so that us going as a package deal would be something I never even thought about. But anyway, that's just one of 50 conversations I've had
I'm
with players
sure.
as far as where they want to go, or do they want to stay? How's it going to look? What's it? It's just everything. The Asbury tournament we're in over in Lexington. I was signed up in that and back in January, and they reach out to me about every 2 weeks or maybe not that much, but they're just wanting to make sure that I'm all in on the tournament. I kept telling them I'm doing everything I can. I promise you, if something changes. But anyway, we finally got it, you know, queued up to where they know we're coming, and so it's going to end up being a good tournament.
It
I may not have all my guys with me, but we're going to be competitive.
it's fascinating because in a normal year with who you're losing, this would be one of these, reloading, rebuilding years, whatever we want to say, where you had all these new faces you were going to have to mesh together. So now you add that to the fact that it's the last year in the history of the program. And so you have all that swirling around you. And usually in the kind of years that you're going to have these younger guys, your freshmen, sophomores, juniors, they can look to their nucleus becoming a great nucleus next year and the year after, and that doesn't exist. And so
Right.
it's just it's
Yeah,
pretty fascinating, coach.
I tell you what does exist is I'm in the same position they are. Yeah, right. Usually you're like, okay, who are we bringing in next year? How's it going to look next? But this year, our mindset is, I'm with you guys. This is all our last year here, and we don't know where our future holds. So, in a weird way, our experience, and it's probably the only time I could ever say this, my experience is going to be the exact same as
Yeah,
theirs about how unsure I am.
right.
But with that comes a sense of freedom. Like, we're just, this is our last year here, so why not try it? Why not? Why
Sure.
not? Why not schedule a trip to Hawaii for 9? Well, and that's what we're doing. We're going to Hawaii for 9. You know what I mean? If you're going to go out, why not go out?
Right.
With everybody on the same page, and we're all living
Yeah.
experience the best as we can. So yeah, it's a different experience, but it's actually a sense of freedom in a strange way. It's like we kind of just get to do our thing, not worry about what's going to happen here next year, play our best, do whatever we can to win every game, and what happens in the future, we're all going to kind of negotiate it, navigate through those
Sure.
experiences together.
Is it absolutely bizarre for you to not be recruiting right now? I mean, right now we're talking about, just the heart of D3 recruiting season where you've identified guys over the summer, you've been to some camps, now you're starting to get them on campus, and now the process just like, is it bizarre to not be recruiting right now?
First of all, I had to make about 40 phone calls to every recruit that I had on the list
Oh
and
man.
tell them that, yeah, yeah, that's where step one is. You got to call everybody and explain to them that I may land somewhere in 2 years and we'll see how your first year goes. And, I'm still though, I'll got your number, name, and I'll be watching you and I'll help, blah, blah, blah. I'll help you land wherever you need to go. So anyway, that's the first step that happens. But then, yeah, then you don't have, in a weird way, it's a sense of relief. But what I found is I'm kind of missing it. As much as I complain about recruiting to our mission staff and Coach Bunch and everybody, as much as I've complained, in a weird way, I missed that sense of energy of getting.
Sure.
There's nothing. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed that energy of that new freshman class coming in. Yeah, they make some they have the craziest questions and they can't find their classes and they register for 4 hours. So, they go through all that. But the energy they bring into your program, it revitalizes you every year. And I never realized that because I was always trying to put out fires with them. But it does. There's a sense of energy of having
Yeah.
those new high school seniors come in to because them and their families are so excited about taking on this college basketball life. And there's nothing you can do or say that they are not going to overcome because
Right.
they're just so excited. So, yeah, that part I'm really missing. But in a sense, it's also helped me to realize how much I miss it. But anyway, that part, but it's also given me a lot more free time. I've been talking to other coaches about, helping them out, coming on board. There's other programs I'm looking into. So it's also given me a chance to take a little stand back from everything, see if I wanted what division I would want to be in. Do I want to still stay in Division 3 and head coach and you know all that? But the experience of bringing that recruiting class in and that's something I miss. I'm missing more than I thought, but I don't miss losing real good players to other teams. I
Right.
don't miss
Right.
that part, but just the whole experience I miss more than I thought I would.
And it sounds like I was going to ask you just the final question, which I think you've touched on, which is where do you see yourself going? It sounds like what you're saying is, from what I'm hearing, that you want to coach. You're going to go somewhere, and it seems like you're open to what level that's at. D1, D2, D3, NAI, JUCO. Are you looking for the best fit for yourself, Lance? Is that fair to say?
I was an assistant with Coach McKinney for so long, so I don't mind. I just enjoy being around basketball. I don't mind being. I'm okay being the assistant. I feel like
Sure.
my knowledge about the game and my rapport with how to coach these guys is good enough. So it really, as a head coach, you do so much more organizing and scheduling and meetings with the administration. That part of it, I'm okay with not having. So as an assistant, you kind of and you never lose as the assistant. You never have that. So
Right.
you always got that factor too. But yeah, I would like to be a head coach too. That's where I ultimately want to be. But I have no problem being an assistant. It would probably hopefully be at a higher level, but I would also be okay assisting at the Division 3 level too. So as where I land or what my next road is, I'm so open to it that it doesn't really it really
Sure.
50-50. Whether I'm a head coach or assistant coach, being around the game is what I've always told Coach Minnie. I just love being around the game. And whatever happens, happens. I actually turned down coaching with Coach Burnson at UMSL Division 2 to stay with Coach McKinney back in the early 2000s, just because he had let me have such a place, to help with the team that I knew I wasn't going to be able to find anywhere
Right.
else. Kind of like an associate head coach. And so I decided to stay at Fontbonne. I'm glad I did. That was one of the best decisions I ever made. But whether you're assistant or head coach, there's so many things that are the
Right.
same. Besides the salary, the salary's different, but the rest of it's very, very much the same experience.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Lance, and how candid you've been about all of this stuff, which I think is very complicated. And from the standpoint of how you've taken care of the student athletes through this, and that whole thing to me is extremely impressive. Fontbonne has been such a great member of Division III and the SLIAC for just again, I when I think of Fontbonne, I don't remember Division III without Fontbonne. So,
Yeah, they
boy,
were the
when
founding members in
sure,
1989 with Maryville and Principia and School Park College and just that. But anyway, Fontbonne was with Westminster. Westminster was also involved. There was just like 4 or 5 of them still left that
yeah,
founding members in '89 of the SLAC. Yeah.
when I heard that news, that I didn't see that coming. And when I heard that news in March, I was like, wow, like Fontbonne's not going to be around anymore. So that really hit kind of hard to a lot of people on the periphery of Fontbonne. And I'll just say thank you so much to sharing all this. I think it'll give people an insight into how this is all working within the doors there. Lance, I'll give you the final words. You're going to have a lot of people from the Division III community tuning in. Hopefully, some people from Fontbonne, the SLIAC. What would you leave everyone with on the QCast here today?
Like I said earlier, I can't thank the coaching community for being so kind to me. That's the one huge thing that's come out of all this. I can't thank my president Nancy Blattner for supporting me so much. My athletic director Daniel. I don't want this to sound like this is the end of it, but my athletic director Daniel Dorfler. They've been huge supporters of just trying to navigate this whole thing and making sure that the team was taken care of and that I had all the resources needed to pull this off. But to all my SLIAC guys, the SLIAC coaches are, they're a hardy bunch. We don't get a whole lot of respect in the SLIAC, but we do pull off some big victories. But as all those guys in the SLIAC, they love what they do. They're different ages, and we got the older guys like me, got the younger guys, and we're kind of right there in the Midwest,
Right.
Illinois and Missouri and Louisville. And but they're like I said, they're a hardy bunch, but they're really supportive guys. And like I can't thank them enough for how supportive they've been. But anyway, it's just everybody that's understood our situation and had so many questions. I've tried to answer and be as open as I could about everything that's going on here and try to let them know how Bob Bomb was going to go and that we weren't going to, put a hole in their schedule. I was going to do
Right.
everything I could to have a team. That was a big, but they were also very helpful and understood the situation, whether I did or didn't. But I know how hard it was to fill 2 spots in a schedule, so I was going to do everything in my power to make our team work just for that factor alone, so they didn't have to go out scrambling. But anyway, yeah, that's the thing. Just to thank and just put up my thankness for everybody that's been so kind to me. I think that's pretty cool seeing it from the other side than when I was
Yeah.
in the competitive side, always competing against them. It was refreshing to see, and doing these interviews like this, they're nice to get the word out and get it. There may be some misnomers or people be kind of not understanding of everything, so it's
Right.
good to get this message out to where everyone kind of hopefully understands it a lot more now than maybe before this interview.
Yeah, I
So
think when they
hopefully,
watch this, you've been very clear about how this is playing out. And again, thanks so much, Lance, for your time. To the QCast viewers, this has been the season debut of season 5. Excited about the season ahead. Lance, look forward to following Fontbonne. Look forward to following the Griffins this year in the final season of the program. It's a compelling story. I think you'll have everyone rooting for you guys. Wish you the best of luck personally as you kind of find what that right fit is for you at whatever level, at whatever role. And if there's anything I can do along the way, if you want to chat again during the season, I'd love to do that. So I really appreciate your time, Coach.
no problem. Thank you for everything. I appreciate it too.
Thanks, Coach.